Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. 3 years. 3 straight Big 12 championships. 3 straight college football playoff appearances. But 3 straight college football playoff losses. Oklahoma has been one of the best teams in the entire country ever since Lincoln Riley took over back in 2017. But the Sooners have not been able to get over the hump. Can they do it in 2020? As we take a look at their upcoming schedule as the 8th ranked team in our way too early top 25. Now, of course, going into 2020, Oklahoma is going to be the favorite in the Big 12. They're going to have some very difficult competition. Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Texas, Baylor. But Oklahoma is the king of the Big 12 until proven otherwise. They have a lot of key pieces to replace. Jalen Hurts departs, the 3rd straight transfer quarterback to come out of Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and now Jalen Hurts. He is gone along with one of the best wide receivers in all of college football in CeeDee Lamb. So now the reins have been handed over to the freshman quarterback in Spencer Rattler, who is not a transfer quarterback. And if history is any indication, he is in store for a very big year in Norman because Lincoln Riley, offensive guru, fantastic with his quarterbacks. He's got Kennedy Brooks alongside him at running back, and of course some key pieces to fill in at wide receiver, but does have Jaden Hazelwood and Theo Howard, the transfer wide receiver out of UCLA. The defense is going to be much better, I think. Much more experience, maybe better than the one they had last year, and Alex Grinch is going to have a lot to work with as defensive coordinator as the Sooners are once again looking to capture a 4th straight Big 12 title and make a 4th straight appearance in the college football playoff. This time, they actually hope to win a game when they get there. To do that, they open the season against Missouri State. Not too big, not going to be a game on everybody's radar, but a great matchup for a new quarterback. Great opportunity for Oklahoma to work out any issues they have at the quarterback position, any struggles they might have, especially I think more so offensively this year than defensively, just with all the new pieces. They've got to get those pieces figured out because in week 2 they host Tennessee, who some think this could be a trendy upset with the Volunteers coming into Norman here. I think it'd be even trendier if the game was being played at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. But nonetheless, this is one of those marquee matchups that we're going to see in week 2. So many great matchups. This is one of them. And it's really going to test Oklahoma here. It's an opportunity to get a great resume-boosting win over a quality SEC opponent that could probably win anywhere from 8 to 10 games in 2020. So this is going to be a huge test for them. Huge test for a new quarterback in Spencer Rattler. A huge test for the Oklahoma defense that I said was more experienced, that I do think is going to be better, but is dealing with some key suspensions for the beginning of the season. So not a game that Oklahoma can afford to overlook. It's going to be a really, really fun one that you do not want to miss in week 2. The one thing that I certainly do not like about Oklahoma's schedule is that their bye week comes in week 3. That means Oklahoma is going to play 10 straight games. 10 straight games. No team, not many teams I should say, in college football are going to benefit from the double bye like many teams had in 2019. Oklahoma gets one, comes in week 3, 10 straight games. Very, very unfortunate for them. And that bye week doesn't come at the best of times, doesn't come before the best opponent, but does come before an intriguing opponent. And that's a road game at Army, who the Sooners cannot afford to overlook. As the Knights almost came into Norman 2 years ago in 2018 and won, losing 28-21 to the Sooners in overtime. So Jeff Monken's done a phenomenal job over at West Point. This is going to be an electric atmosphere. Army more than likely hosting a top 10 team in week 4. While Oklahoma certainly will be favored in this game, it's going to be a very historic one for that Army football program. So one that you certainly want to keep your eye on and one that could be interesting. That Army option is very, very difficult to stop. Oklahoma struggled with it in 2018. Michigan struggled with it last year as they nearly fell to Army. Oklahoma certainly doesn't want to trip up right before conference play opens with Baylor on October 3rd. And here's one thing I will say. We've done it all throughout these schedule previews. We say, all right, what's that key stretch? 3-4 game stretch is going to be key for Oklahoma or for their respective team. For Oklahoma, it's the entire month of October. Baylor at home, Texas in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, at Iowa State, Bedlam against Oklahoma State, and then a road game at TCU. We look at this Baylor team opening up Big 12 conference play for the Sooners. They should have lost to Baylor not once, but twice last year. Baylor blew it. They blew a 28-3 lead in Waco, resulting in a 34-31 win for the Sooners to keep their playoff hopes alive. And then the Big 12 championship, with a playoff spot on the line, Oklahoma won 30-23 in overtime. Baylor should have won both of those. Now, the Bears lose so many key pieces. The biggest one they retain is Charlie Brewer. And with him, I think the Bears have a chance in the majority of their games. But they do lose their head coach in Matt Rule. Dave Aranda comes over, steps in as defensive coordinator from LSU, now taking the head coaching position in Waco. This game being played in Norman, with Baylor having to deal with so many key pieces, might not be in favor of the Bears, but certainly can contend in this one. Oklahoma lucky to have it at home. Then Texas, the Red River rivalry down at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. A game that Oklahoma won 34-27 last year, and like the Baylor game, probably shouldn't have defeated Texas last year. It was a relatively sloppy game by the Sooners. A lot of mistakes were made, but more mistakes were made by Texas, especially when it came to just plain fundamental football. Could not tackle, and specifically could not tackle C.D. Lamb. And because of that, Oklahoma got a 34-27 victory over the Longhorns. This will once again be a very competitive game with Sam Ehlinger returning and maybe a rejuvenated defense led by Chris Ash as defensive coordinator. This game could be a preview of the Big 12 championship game and could very well shape who makes that championship game. Then the road game at Iowa State. Another game Oklahoma almost lost in 2019. A lot of games that were very close for the Sooners considering they went 12-2. Iowa State nearly came into Norman and won, losing 42-41. Their two-point conversion at the end of the game failed, was unsuccessful. Very, very close. And we know that Iowa State just a few years ago went into Norman and won. Now Oklahoma has to travel to Ames, with what some are saying is one of the best and most experienced Iowa State teams we've ever seen. Brock Purdy is back at quarterback, and like we've said with Texas, like we said with a lot of teams, in Purdy we trust. With Brock Purdy, they have a chance to win every single game. And Ames is one of the most difficult places to play in the Big 12, maybe even up there in the entire country as well. If Spencer Rattler is struggling a little bit, if Oklahoma's defense is not up to par, Iowa State could very well pull off a monster upset on October 17th, especially depending on what happens in this Texas game down in Dallas. They then get Oklahoma State. That game last year, the Sooners took relatively easy care of, winning 34-16. But we've talked about Oklahoma State, how great they're going to be offensively. Mike Gundy has them in position not only to make a Big 12 championship, but is also that playoff dark horse as well. Spencer Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, and Tylan Wallace all coming back on that offense, which could be one of the best in the country. This game is played in Norman, but it's still an in-state rivalry game. While Oklahoma has home field advantage, plenty of Cowboy fans are going to be there as well. And crazy things happen in Bedlam. Better watch out for this game. This, like the Texas game, could be a preview of the Big 12 championship game and will certainly decide who gets to that point as well. And then rounding out October, you've got TCU, a team that didn't even go bowling last year, but a team that almost came into Norman and won, only falling to the Sooners 28-24. They've now added their first five-star recruit in school history and running back Zach Evans. And Gary Patterson's team is one that many are expecting a huge bounce-back year from. Anywhere from 8 to 10 wins from the Horned Frogs, some are saying. This game is at TCU. This TCU team is better than the TCU team that almost came into Norman and won last year. Now, I'm here to tell you this. The month of October is the biggest stretch for Oklahoma. It's the biggest part of the season for Oklahoma. FPI has them going 12-0. It should be noted that in 3 years under Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma's had an 11-1 record in the regular season every single year. They've tripped up at least once somewhere down the road. And I do think they will trip up somewhere between October 3rd and October 31st. In that 5-game stretch, I think they slip up somewhere. Could be to Texas. Could be to, really, it could be any of these games. I'm really not going to lie. It could be any of those games. Not predicting which one, but I do think they trip up at least once in this 5-game stretch. If PI has them at 12-0, I don't think they can get to that point. You hit the month of November here, things get a little easier for Oklahoma. Kind of that back half, that last third of the schedule at West Virginia, certainly a game they cannot afford to overlook, but a team they did defeat 52-14 last year. Kansas State, that's the one that if this was played in Manhattan would certainly be a major trap game. Because last year in Manhattan, the Wildcats handed the Sooners their first loss of the season. They were 7-0 before falling to the Wildcats 48-41. Chris Kleiman's doing a phenomenal job with his Wildcat squad. The defense, it's one of the better defenses in the Big 12. The offense is certainly getting there. They won 8 games last year in his first season, not at Kansas State, but at the FBS level, coming over from North Dakota State. This game's in Norman, a revenge game for Oklahoma, but one that could be similar to that TCU game we saw last year. Very close game from a team that you really don't expect it to be. Then Kansas at home, not in Lawrence like Kansas hosts many of the big boys. They don't get to host Oklahoma this year. And then at Texas Tech, a team that Oklahoma beat 55-16 last year. I expect the Red Raiders to improve quite a bit, but will they be improved enough to maybe beat the Sooners in Lubbock or even make a game out of it? That remains to be seen. But the biggest stretch of their schedule is the whole entire month of October. That's going to define whether or not Oklahoma makes the Big 12 championship, but more so makes the college football playoff. It's going to be very, very telling. A lot of key pieces to replace, but we say that every year with Lincoln Riley's teams, and every year he exceeds expectations. I surely hope 2020 is no different. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate your support so much. Check out everything down in the description below as well for exclusive college football news, content, and offers that you do not want to miss. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.